Welcome to the first ever Fatherhood Unity Month, brought to you by CBMA, Campaign for Black Male Achievement, Good Fathers Only, and the Daddy Talk podcast. Today, we're having a town hall on literacy. My special guest is Brother Chris Rutherford and Brother Melvin Decares. We also have my friend and brother, supporter John Miles on the call, and we're expecting Cindy Eggelston to chime in sooner or later. Literacy, guys, is a very important piece, and it has caused many problems, the lack thereof. And having the conversation around how important men are to a number of things is one thing. But having this conversation around fatherhood and reading, because reading is life. That's our thing. That's what we talk about. Reading is life. And we are most definitely very, very important to what the reading is about. How our young men have been absent from reading. There was a study, and then we can get right into it. There was a study done out of Australia based on 405 families. They just based it on 405 families where there were two-parent households. And they found that it was very significant, as it is for both parents to be involved with the reading of the children. But what they found that was even bigger was where the father was reading the bedtime stories to the 2-year-old, they found a significant growth in language in the 4-year-old. So when the child became 4, they noticed it was a major difference in the child's reading than it was when the father is not present. So compared to a number of families, the study showed how important fathers really are to reading. There was another study where it also comes out. There are a number of studies that come out, but there was another study that showed the impact that both parents have on the child in the reading. And so I want to start there. And Chris, I want to start with you and let you hear, because you are big into reading, and it's just that little piece that we'll be talking about throughout, but how important fathers are to the reading levels.
Yeah, thanks, Brother Calvin, and greetings to all the other brothers who are joining us in this town hall, as well as Cindy Eggelston, who I hope will get a chance to join in, and all the other people from our great community and around the country who are joining in on this call. As you said, Calvin, I don't know if I can make a better statement around it. Reading in and of itself is essential, right? In a knowledge age, reading is like water. If you can't read, you will die. And so it is extremely important for our young people, our fathers, especially our new fathers, to understand their impact. When you reference that study, you know, it coincides with the Harvard University study that talks about the great impact that fathers or significant male caregivers in the home give to students around reading. And part of what the data cited was that fathers, they read differently to their students. They said that mothers tend to ask teacher-like, fact-based questions, where fathers ask more questions that are more abstract, which creates a different way of students. It sparks more imaginative discussions, right? And so fathers' questions are more abstract questions, sometimes more playful, sometimes more fun. As a former teacher in the schools, we know that both of these are relevant, but the fact that when the father is present, or the significant male caregiver, it adds a different aspect to the child's learning, thus having the capacity to accelerate their growth. And so there couldn't be a more important subject, especially now in Detroit, with the challenges in the federal courts around the state of Michigan, denying access to literacy for our students in the city, and in many other, quite frankly, cities in this country, and definitely in this state, where there's been things like emergency management and school district takeover, and Dr. Vitti has certainly done a great job of explaining how, you know, we got to this place. But also, we also have to remember that education starts in the home, and to the extent that we can as parents provide those foundational supports to our students, it only accelerates their growth and their learning. And so it's extremely necessary for there to be a movement around, you know, men tend to think the education part, especially in a two-parent family, you know, many times men leave the education to the women. Schools and places are designed more to receive women, right? And I was at a meeting with the Detroit Public Schools, and they were talking about a document that they had, and I looked through the document and I said, there's no pictures of men in the document interacting with students. And so it's little things like that where, you know, we have to constantly elevate this issue. We have to constantly elevate the need, and we have to constantly push both internally within our communities and in our families, but definitely externally on the systems around engaging fathers, engaging significant male caregivers, and men in general, and welcoming into these education spaces in a comfortable way, so that we can accelerate the learning of our students.
Yeah, I find that, you know, and Melvin will be able to touch on this, because Melvin being involved with Good Fathers Only, being involved with PTA at his school, being involved, Melvin has been going around the barbershops, flipping books, putting books in different barbershops, making sure that reading is a component, because while we're sitting in these break rooms, those are the times that we can read. You know, I can't tell you a number of times where I stopped cutting and just, you know, exaggerated reading, you know, to some young kids, and we don't realize how important it really is. Right now, myself, I'm finding myself trying to finagle around doing some more reading with some more younger kids, and so we even working on a young program. But Mel, if you could, let me unmute you. I'll unmute you. If you could, Mel. Hold on, let me see. There you go.
All right.
Share a little bit about what you guys are doing over at your school and how you're impacting and getting fathers involved in the whole nine.
Well, one of the things that before all the quarantine and lockdown happened, we were about to get into reading month, which was March. And we had a number of different things that were planned, such as we wanted to get fathers in the schools to read to the younger grades, because we know the impact of how the younger grades can hear a father who reads to them. Because they add, as Chris was saying, they add a different dimension that altogether. And the statistics have shown that men plays a vital role in the development of not only literacy, but education itself for the kids. So we realized the impact of reading. So we had a number of different things. We had at Burton in the National Academy, we have books all the time in the hallways. So kids can take books home, variety of different topics, such as, there's everything by biographies, nonfiction, you name it, that will help them to grow. And so I know as us as a PTA, we work with the teachers, and we try to make certain that that we work on the same page, so that we understand, like, okay, what do the teachers need from the parents? And then we relay that to the parents, that this is what is necessary. As far as the reading component goes, one thing that is crucial, and I think what pet fathers need to understand, especially here in Michigan, where we have this third grade reading law, that the more you read to your children at a younger age, the more successful they are. I think there's statistics where when a child get to the third grade and they're not at that reading level, they're 4 times likely to not finish high school at all.
Yeah.
So we need
that's live. Yeah. No, go ahead, Mel. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So we need to make sure men know that this is not just a woman's thing. This is a two-parent thing. We need both parents to be on the same page and let them know that they play a vital role in their children's development.
Awesome. We got a couple of guys out there. You know, you can raise your hand if you got something you want to say during this process, or you can reach down to the little reactions and throw your hand up that way, or put your hand up. We'll see you, and we'll unmute you and bring you in. The piece that you were talking about, Mel, and then the piece that Chris and I, we were having meetings as well, right? And then Chris was in charge of making sure that they were having the conversations with the different schools and doing the different reading. That's why I wanted Cindy to come on as well, because she was a part of that. We were in the room planning. And it was right around the time my children's book was about to be released. But the phenomenon that is being discovered is fathers need to still be reading when they hit middle school. Fathers need to still be reading when they hit high school. And the statistics show that the boy, when the father is not present, tends to think that reading is more feminine, that it has nothing to do with him. And so them being taught to read, those types of things, that is why I be yelling and screaming about you see so much strength in the girl because she has the in-house role model. When you move that father out the way, it brings that boy down. He doesn't have the in-house role model. So which is why kids need both parents. Chris, if you can enlighten us a little bit about how that situation went with you guys in DPS.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for full disclosure, I led that project when I was with the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. No longer. So kudos to my brother Sean Dove for having the foresight to engage us in that work. But it was really a phenomenal thing to bring this movement. It was called Dad's Read, and so we had partnered with various community organizations such as Cindy Eggelston's Bright Futures, as well as various schools. And all we did was ask parents to come in, or to ask the school to set up a time for parents to come in and read to the students. And it was phenomenal. You know, it went phenomenally well. And just, you know, the number of partners we had, the excitement of the students as well as the teachers. We participated with, I think, about 4 DPS schools, and then all of the Bright Future locations and a few other locations participated. And they simply had fathers and dads and men out of the community come in and read to the students that they were serving. And I mean, we had everything from police officers who served a particular community to some of the teachers and educators themselves, because it's important for our students to see men reading, period. Particularly, as you mentioned, seeing their fathers read. But it's definitely important for them to see Black men reading, right? The prevailing stereotype is that, you know, we get all of our information over social media, and that's just virtual, you know, that's just impossible. Especially for those of us who lead work throughout our communities, you know, we have to read. I was working with my nephew the other day, and he was getting mad about having to write a paper over, right? He's doing his virtual lessons, and I was telling him, I said, man, you're gonna have to read and write for the rest of your life. So there's no use getting upset about it. All these things you say you want to do is going to involve reading and writing. And so it's just critically important. The other thing is, in my past life, I used to work for Houghton Mifflin Publisher as an educational sales consultant. And one of the data pieces that we used to use was that in middle class, average home in a middle class community, a child had access to 300 books. And in a poor community, a child had, it was like one book for every 3 houses. And so it's critically important for us to leaders in this space around bringing literacy and increasing literacy in our community as a community base. So I'm glad that, as you know, while I still work in education in a different capacity, you know, it's good to have people from the community here, because this has to be a community-wide effort. And men have to lead this effort, and fathers can lead this effort in their family if they're not already doing it. And so it's critically important that we continue to engage that work from this level. You know, we were leading into, as you stated, reading month that was coming in, and we just had some great things. Kudos to Dr. Leah Van Bell, who had set up some, who was working closely with us to advance some of this work and this cause throughout the community as well as in other spaces. And even at her role with the MDE, the Michigan Department of Education. And there's just a culminating piece around it. And the fact that we have to keep championing this message. We have to keep championing this work. And we have to engage more community organizations to have literacy. Like you said, it's just as easy as having books in whatever it is you do, whether it's a hair salon, whether it's a barbershop, whether it's a community space. There just has to be a rich access to literacy and books. We have to also teach our kids to use the internet for something more than social media content, gossip, and things like that. You know, how do we maintain those of our kids who have access to technology by making sure that we find literature for them on, you know, if they don't want to sit down and read a paper book like you and I do, you know, then how do we make sure we continue to engage them through technology? But it has to be, Brother Quan Nellums does the Lyricist Society, another strong brother and father who's leading that, not only as he homeschools his own children, but with students in the community, using hip hop as a tool to engage young men and now young women, to engage them in developing stronger literacy skills. And so there's a lot going, and I think that, you know, as we continue to push, we'll see more surface and really begin to allow more men to feel comfortable with stepping into this space.
Awesome. We have to. We are just about to be joined by Cindy. Let me see, as soon as she gets on. But yeah, I mean, awesome. So we got to figure that out. And it's important that we do figure that out sooner or later. Welcome, Cindy. I know you're trying to get in and get comfortable. I know this is probably your 18th call of the day. You know, and so I'm trying to, there you go. How you doing, Cindy?
Glad to be on this with you guys.
Good, good. So, you know, we've covered a number of things. I know literacy is big with Brilliant Detroit. And I know we've talked, and there's your beautiful face. And I know how you support literacy. So if you don't mind sharing, you know, share with the people some of the things that you guys do with literacy at Brilliant Detroit.
Yeah, and hello everyone. It's an honor to be on the call with you guys. And I think, how many of you know about Brilliant Detroit at all? Any of you? A little bit, okay. So what we do is we have houses in the middle of the neighborhood, and really the neighborhood invites a Brilliant Detroit in. And out of those houses, we provide education, health, and family support for families and kids belly to 8. Literacy is a huge focus. And we also are the backbone for the grade level reading campaign for the city of Detroit. And Calvin is somebody who is a hero to me because he brings people together for the right thing. And I think you guys all know, since you're on this call, literacy is a really big thing. And our kids are just not getting everything that they need. So at Brilliant, we have 8 locations. Just about, well, they're in every district of Detroit. And they're open right now for kids to get tutoring, as well as book different literacy, as well as we're recruiting people, like I'd love everyone on this call to read to kids and be part of something in that way. In particular, I see Black men on this call, other men. Our kids need that in their life, so we are partnered with different groups, different fraternities, etc., to be helpful in that way. In each of our homes, what I want to say is they are really brought together from the neighborhood, and we hire from the neighborhood, so they each reflect that personality. And so part of the things are, like I said, there's tutoring that has shown kids to grow 2 grade levels, which is a big deal. There's another program which is aided by an online, which is about a year and a half of growth. There's a program for the summer which is called Reading is Fundamental, which is really done with community volunteers and other volunteers to help read to kids every day, and they get books that they can keep and have and hold on to, and there's discussion around it. The idea is to focus on literacy and help our kids and make sure they have a relationship. Some of the things I'm hearing right now is that kids that don't want to go to the school the way it is right now are showing up for their tutoring because they have a one-on-one mentor with them. That's a good thing. And so in my heart and in my spirit, I'm trying really hard to do as much as we possibly can. We're able to serve at least another 500 kids right now, and we need mentors to go along with that. But the other part of it is, and I don't know where you started, Calvin, I don't know who's all on this call, is to just really help others that want to be involved in literacy find ways in their own communities or with their own networks that maybe we can give free books to, maybe we can help you set up in a something that has some evidence behind it, that we can really take care of our kids and walk a path and support, because we have to do that. And the statistic is clear. Only about 15% of kids are reading at grade level by 3rd grade. Calvin, this is something new that I haven't said to you yet, which this is not for publication, but really sticks with me, is we're partners with schools as well. And Detroit Public Schools said to me during this period of COVID, about 15% to 20% of kids are not doing any learning, maybe 10% learning. About 15 to 20% of the kids are doing about 90%. And there's 60% that's in between. And that kills me. I'm 1st generation high school graduate. It just kills me because it's going to be nearly impossible to catch kids up if we don't all come together in some way to get our kids and work with them. And that's going to involve summer. As you know, school's not going to open the same in the fall. Maybe by January we'll be back together, but not until then. And really, the kids need a couple of things. They need somebody who can help them with literacy, and they need a mentor along the way as well. I was just talking to a friend of mine who helped found the AmeriCorps program, and he's like an expert in this area. It's relationship first. This is what you know, Calvin, and then it's the curriculum and how you're going to do it. So we're doing everything we can out of multiple neighborhoods, but also trying to help others do what they can do. Because this isn't about one organization. This is about us all coming together.
Well, no, I agree. You know, just from the work we do, thinking about what you're saying about mentors, right? And so, you know, we're looking at it from a standpoint, the 5 to 12. We've had a program we've been sitting on ourselves from ages 1 to 7. You know, to get involved even more, uh, trying to recruit more men, get more fathers involved, because it takes 12 mentors to equal one father. So if we can get some fathers mentoring,
Yeah.
we can expedite. And from our program standpoint, um, we are speeding up. So we continue to do our mentoring even after they had to shut down and we had to shut down, and our kids and the parent and the parental involvement. You have a high level of parental involvement. Um, let's talk about the ways. How can we really get to the parents other
Yeah.
than, you know, what's the trick to get to the parents? You know, from your standpoint, maybe John Miles, you might want to jump in on this, and Chris, Cindy, I'll let you go first, and then we'll go to you, Chris. But what's a real good way, you know, because we're having success with parental
Right.
involvement.
So I want to just say I couldn't agree with you more, and I'll talk to you about how we do it, but I really want to hear from everybody else. And I will say that the parental involvement or caregiver or somebody is really important. And by explanation of that, we do offer a program called Book Nook that we can help others get involved with. And they were saying to me, and this is kind of shocking, it's a really tough time right now. What was shocking to me was how much higher our engagement was. It's a tough time. So people don't have computers, they can't get on, they're overwhelmed. All of that was happening. So nationally, they were only showing 10% of parent engagement. 10%. And in ours, during the height of the COVID, it was at 75%. So they came to us and said, what is going on? And I think really the first thing that is going on for us and you guys is we ask people, what do they need and how do they need it?
Right.
Right? We invite them in. We're not telling them and throwing things at them. And we start off in a place. And because of that, has been able to continue while we've been virtual right now. But it's all based on relationships, which is I know what you're doing as well. And that helps a parent not feel like you're like one of our participants said this, and I'm sure you guys felt this in your work. She said to me, Cindy, I'm 26. I have 4 kids. I've had a really hard life. I've needed programs and services. I probably always will. I never once felt anybody cared about me. I felt like they were trying to do a program or a service to me, but they didn't care about me. And this is one of our participants in our Osborne neighborhood. She comes 5 days a week. She was coming when it was open and had us open on Saturdays because she said this is the first time anybody cared about me. And it's really because it's other people and it's their peers. It's not about somebody saying this is what you must do. It's listening. So I think
Right.
that's how we've done it. We say it's love, safety, and then people grow. But I want to hear from the others because that's kind of how it's worked within our network. Our work is based on listening, but we also don't go into a neighborhood till the neighborhood invites us in, and we take 10 or 12 meetings. So the neighborhood's organizing themselves too first before we're really going in there. So that helps, right?
Right.
They're self-organizing. We're not trying to do something to somebody. They're coming together.
Right. Brother Chris?
Yeah, so, Cindy said it all. This has to be what we call a street movement, a grassroots, a ground level movement. And, the way you engage communities is by going in and letting people decide for themselves what's important and being a resource to and for them. And so, as we as we move forward around doing this work, it's being mindful of just, we have to do everything we can to flood our community with books. And I mentioned earlier that I used to be a sales rep for Houghton Mifflin. And so I used to have a ton of books, man, and even books that were outdated that I couldn't sell no more. And I'd set up a little sign in my driveway, and the neighbors, and there were parents who worked at daycares, and I had brand new books, but Houghton Mifflin didn't want them because they had been touched and opened, but they were brand new. And so I would set up a sign in my driveway about every 6 months and just give them away. But I always, and then one time I had a ton of books in my van, and my van got stolen. And I was like, well, all they gonna get, it's a ton of books, because that was in my van. I hope, I don't know, remember what happened to the van, but I hope the books got spread among the community. But in that, we have to remember, that as we approach our community around something that can be uncomfortable for some, because we know that many of our parents struggle with literacy, because this has been a pervasive problem and ongoing for too long now. And so we always have to be mindful that we can't beat people over the head with our message, even though we know how important and valuable it is. But to approach people with honor and respect, from where and if parents need help, making them feel comfortable, allowing them to feel comfortable, where they can ask you for help, right? And not in a, beating them over the head, but in a, how can I help you? And letting them come to you so that you can be that support that they need so that they can help their children. I also did work with the Detroit Parent Network, and one of the ways that we engaged parents was to go to them first and give them something, right? We always go to parents and families and ask them and say what they need to do. But we started going to them when our project graduation program to help parents feel comfortable and say, and wouldn't say, oh, can I talk to you? I need you to tell me this, tell me that, tell me about what's going on with your student. We walked up to them and some days in our meetings and just said, oh, what do you need? And that would be the conversation. And we saw so many people open up to us, in that project, just around, going to them with a sense of openness, a sense of trust, building those relationships, and so we have to be able to allow people to feel comfortable with approaching this, because we don't know where their comfort levels are. People have various challenges in our community for a lot of different reasons. So we have to be mindful of how we approach, but there does have to be, as broad as we can get it. Cindy's homes are in many communities across this city, but there also has to be a street level movement of just walking down the street and engaging people and not, telling them why they need to read, but just ask them, hey, I got a free book. Would you like to read it? You got a kid? We'd even talked with Ray Winans. He had a lot of young men that he's working in his work in D-Live, who he's bringing in off the street, and their parents and their fathers. And so, how do we get to them, right? How do we get to these brothers that have dropped out of school, and increase the literacy movement as a street movement, as well as an academic movement? That's why, we don't have the academics on this call. I don't believe we do, but we have the community people on this call, because this has to be a community-wide challenge.
Oh, I love you. I mean, that's what it is it's what do you need? And I found that people that care for their kids, and also people that just care about kids, right? All need to know that they have a part in it. And you're right about the books. So I want to put this out here on this idea of a street movement as well. So we have a partnership with Barbershop Books as well. Do you guys know what that is, or who they are?
No, but Melvin does that.
Okay, great. So this is out of New York. You guys look at this guy, because he's awesome. And the idea is to really have books and reading everywhere, like just any normal place or everywhere. So they are giving us, we haven't gotten the order yet, but 3,000 sets of books for kids for the summer that have been picked out by young Black boys. And so I think some of those things too they can be new, they can be used, but that people feel like they have a choice, and what they're getting is also a beautiful thing, right? And so Chris, I agree with you. And however we can help do that, one idea might even be like we're doing a lot of distribution right now. Our first 2.5 weeks with COVID, we gave out 8,000 books.
Wow. Yeah.
We had to get more books in because we gave them all out. But that is a way to help get things out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you supported me, and I was supposed to come and do the reading with my children's book, and I don't want to take that off the table.
Yeah, you know what we're doing too on that is having people read and then giving people books. The idea is to just give as many books as people can possibly have.
Yes. Melvin, if you can, share how you guys are getting the parents involved over at your school.
Well, one thing that we always want to do in reaching with parents is give them the resources. We have a wonderful DHS worker at the school. Her name is Miss Coakley, who tons of resources that they give us. And we give them out at all of our meetings, and we have them all around the schools. So all we have want to do in reaching with parents is give them the resources. We have a wonderful DHS worker at the school. Her name is Miss Coakley, who tons of resources that they give us. And we give them out at all of our meetings, and we have them all around the school. So
You might get that Facebook on. If you're trying to watch Facebook,
parents.
it'll
Okay.
repeat
Oh,
what
it's
you
on
said.
Facebook Live.
We have a welcome to live radio.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Weird.
right. So you can go ahead and finish.
Yeah. So the important thing that we always want to make certain that parents have the resources that they need, because they don't always know the power or the tools that is accessible to them. So you got such things as Parent Academy, which is a wonderful tool that the Detroit Public Schools offer. Teach the parents everything that they possibly can know. Everything from career choices to how they can help their kids. I know one of the things which has been a challenge as far as helping their own kids is such things like dealing with the curriculum. Like Eureka Math, for instance, has been a challenge for not only parents, but it's been a challenge for teachers as well. I know just helping my kids is just trying to understand how things are being taught and try to help my kids the best. Once I understand what they are trying to teach them, I can better help my kids. So helping parents to better help their children is essential, but it starts by make certain they have access to resources and pointing them to the right direction and right people so they be empowered. So those are the things that we do.
So that brings us to another. Anybody got anything they'd like to add to it? Raise your hand. Just put your hand up. I'll unmute you. That brings us to why we're really on this call, right? We really did, and we're celebrating fatherhood. The reason why we're bringing more attention to the fatherhood model is because he now needs to be seen as very important. He needs to know, right? These are the things that you really bring to the table. And what has happened is that for so long, societal-wise, we have just said, this is dad, he provides, he goes home, go to sleep, right? And over the time, we have evolved into understanding that this is dad, he has a cape, he is Superman, he is needed, and he does solve a lot of problems. And he solves a considerable amount of problems, both present, verbally, the whole nine. And now we're understanding how important he is to reading. And so back to what you were saying, Cindy, and as far as doing a groundswell movement, I believe that there are enough writers, there are enough authors, and there are enough organizations in here, in the city and the state, right? Because you got to consider where there's crime, there's a lack of reading. So there are 7 other cities in the state of Michigan where there's a high level of crime and a very high level of poor literacy, right? So Dowagiac, Pontiac, Benton Harbor, Saginaw, some areas of Grand Rapids. I can just go on. There's a couple of them I can't name. But in that process, we have to make a national, it has to be a statewide movement because we have so many cities, even up north communities, the kids are not reading. I mean, when you really get into this lack of literacy, right? I've learned how to be a hunter. I've learned how to survive. I've learned how to survive on the streets. I've learned how to go here and ask questions. But it's time that we take parenting, fatherhood, and dual parenting and start forcing us. And when I use the word forcing, and don't take it on purpose, but kids need both parents. And we need to start valuing how important the father is to the education level of a child. And I think we had gotten away from that. So to your point, Cindy, and Chris, about a campaign, I'm going to wrap my brains around it. I think that, from all the little movements that is taking place, and I don't mean to call them little, but all the pockets of movements that's taking place, where does that literacy council look like, and how do we move on the same level, right? Because you got some organizations, this is what they do. You got organizations, this is what they do. And reading is such a huge piece. We need to simultaneously be teaching the same thing, right? One of the things I have done with reading is wordplay, right? So I get a call from a young lady that this is what she does. We're going to talk, right? How do we build out sentences? Right, so we need to be in those areas. How do we get the kids to and the parents to understand? Even if, like you said, Melvin, you have the parent academy. Not so many parents want to come in and say they're willing to learn because sometimes we get comfortable in our denial. So denialism is a big issue with a lot of people, as we see with racism and a lot of things. Right, denialism is you look across the street, you see it one way, they see it another way, right? So we all got this little denial piece going on, but I would love to pick on that, Chris and Cindy, as to how we can make literacy and make it, because right now everybody is protesting, right? You see all these protests, and to me, the first thought I had in my head was, instead of you protesting that way, let's protest, shut down everybody. Let's build up the neighborhood. Let's pick up everything and let's pick 2-3 houses. We got enough people. Let's do that. Instead of, I understand the anger and everything else. That was just my mindset. That's why you don't see me so active in that area, because we already been working in prevention. That's where my mindset is. Preventing the next level of kids, these kids from committing suicide, these kids from dropping out. That's where our work has been. That's where we continue to work. So what are some of the ideas you guys might have as far as even that groundswell? Like you were talking about the guy from the barber. So we have a number of barbers in the city of Detroit that bought into having books into the barbershops, including our barbershop. And so what is another thing that we could add to that to grow this groundswell for parents?
Sorry.
Don't worry, I got you.
I was saying, Chris, you go first.
Oh,
John, and then but I have an idea.
Mhm.
I have an idea I want to run by you guys.
Great. Yeah, so if you're asking what is it that we can do, so the way I look at it, Calvin, is that so first of all, there has to just be this constant conversation, and it has to come from everywhere. And to create a movement, you have to start where people are. Right now, there's a lot of outrage, and as well there should be, on what's happening in around this country and what has happened for centuries to Black men. And thank God for the outrage, because that's what will bring attention to it. And so we have to take the same kind of fervor. And while this is, what's going on now, as it progresses, it will have its peak and it will have its ramp down period. Hopefully, we get to a point where this country begins to move to a space of resolving these inequities. But that's just one of the inequities, and we have to have the same fervor around how we approach this. And so one of the things that we can do, and these things are broader, right? They can be, yes, community things, but they're also system things. Like, how do we push on our legislators and on our elected officials to highlight this and not push this conversation as to an education department, right? Or that's for schools to handle. Schools handle everything, and this has to be a community-wide effort. So it could be as simple as a letter writing campaign or email campaign to elected officials, to the governor. The governor has, there's some back and forth with the literacy law right now. But one of the things that have been pushed for early on by former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. was making education a constitutional right, right? So how do we make literacy a right of every American, or even just in this state, or just within the confines? You start in a space and you broaden it out. And so that can be as simple as a letter writing, a continuous letter writing campaign to keep it on the forefront of our legislators, because what gets legislated then becomes law and then becomes practice. And so we have to be fervent in that area. How do we engage our community organizations? I like the way Cindy elevated our Black fraternities and sororities. How do we elevate to our sports teams? And maybe not this summer, but in the past, you could drive past any field and there'd be mostly men out there with young people playing football, baseball, or whatever it is. How do we make sure that they incorporate a literacy component, and not just bring me good grades so you can play, but maybe show up? And I don't know if those that do, and maybe they do, but you're showing up to practice an hour ahead of time, and it's going to be a study table, right? And it'll be led by those coaches and Black men and whoever else they bring in. But these are some of the things that we have to start engaging with in our casual conversations, especially, those of us around Black men. Sometimes when we talk, we stay transactional, we stay surface, never showing any depth, around in our conversations. It just stays there so that everything stays cool, but just going deep. If we know Black men or people, period, who are leading organizations, that could be a question. How are you addressing literacy in your organization? What supports do you have in place? How are you promoting it, right? Can I help you promote it through my mediums? But just making it so that people see it everywhere. As I stated before, when you're doing a grassroots campaign, it's saturating the conscience and saturating the mind that this is the most important thing that you can do. Right now, I work in college access, and in order to obtain the vocabulary that you need to be college ready, it can't be taught in schools. There's not enough years in school to teach the vocabulary. The only way to get the vocabulary to be college ready is through reading. And so it's critically important for us around every spectrum and every level of our engagement with this society. And so we have to go to wherever we are, we have to go to those spaces, even in places that we work now. How are we addressing literacy? And we have to ask that question. And it can be a corporation, because everybody has a role to play. because these are their next level of workers to come in the future. And so everybody has a role to play in this. I always say, people, there's enough, there's enough dirt to shovel, so just stick your shovel in the ground and start digging. So,
can I ask you guys a question? Because I love this, and I want to see what could happen and how could I help in some way, because I think this is the way forward. Every statistic shows that, but we know it in our hearts, right? I see it. Chris, when we did the book reading at the sites, that honestly, people were coming out everywhere. When we have the fraternity hosts an 8-week and they sit down with the kids, we had triple the amount of kids coming than we normally do. And those kids wouldn't leave. And so this is it, you guys. I think this is it. So what if from this, and Calvin with you and everybody here, we write out these different things you can do. But what if we actually launched a campaign this summer? This is the question I have. Because we were going to do something like this, but what if we call it, it's the men that are launching it. And I think I could get funding behind it. This is, to do this is really to put a reading campaign out, encouraging kids to read this summer and get them the book and actually earn points, but somehow connect that with men, because Calvin, your point is it's getting both. It's a first step, and then there can be deeper ways to get involved. I will tell you that one thing that I felt really viscerally at one point is Libraries Without Borders does this laundry mats, and I ran one my own self 3 years ago because I wanted to see how it went. And so twice a week I went to the laundromat and worked with kids on reading. Okay, sometimes it was just drawing, but I wanted to understand, like, how was it going to work. And what happened was it was just really sort of easygoing, not a bunch of parameters. And I started with one table and I ended up with 10 tables outside. There wasn't enough room at the laundromat outside. And it actually was the men of the community, because they were coming and they were sitting alongside the kids, and there were things that they felt comfortable doing, like just drawing together, talking. We had a barbecue together. It was just kind of relaxed. And when I went back into that laundromat after the summer, like 4 weeks later, and this hurt my heart, 2 of the little boys that we were in the cohort, right? They were there, and they had been coming every 2 weeks for everybody from the neighborhood to show up. And guess what? The summer was over, but that hurt my heart, right? So I'm just saying, like, what if we did something that was a campaign, can get people involved and get it started, and so that it could build and then give people more. I know the fraternities that we're working with, they would get out there and support this as well. I actually have a competition going on between a couple fraternities and sororities right now, but we would do this on the fraternities, but something that people can plug into, and we can get kids books in the neighborhoods. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? What do you think?
Well, I don't see it as a bad idea at all. Like you said, hammering it out, seeing how, because right now for us, for me, I mean, the summer, I don't see it being a bad thing, right? And so it just on how we lay it out and how we push it out, and it's still, let's get as many organizations involved in it as possible, so it's not just 5 neighborhoods or 6 neighborhoods. Like, literally, let's be incorporative of as many neighborhoods, many east side, west side, south side, north side. Hey, here's something that we're putting together. Jump in. You can do this in your free time. I'm sure you got all these other programs going on, but this is something where we're trying to pull them in. Why? Just to give you an idea. So why are we trying to pull them in? One, we show the value, right? We're putting the information where it's showing the value of the man, right? This is what the man brings to the table. This is what the man does, right? We're showing the value, right? Because, you know, we've seen a few pieces being done, and that's not what happens. We say we want the man, right? But we're different. So I know that's something for you for sure. So you want the men, let's make sure that they see themselves in the literature and the words, right? And the benefits for them. I think
Right.
what happens is that a number of us men, you know, we ask the question, what's in it for me? Well, they don't realize how that piece, that time that they, you know, that they do it in, that time is just right on time. Like your time is just going to help, because that's what the study has shown, that when men do get involved and men are reading and continuously reading, it turns around and it helps them. There's even one study where the more that the man read, the closer he got to the nurturing side of himself and built a quality relationship. I want to share a little point that was made last night by John Conyers III on our conversation we had last night, and it was about parenting. And you know, him being a 29-year-old male and being very analytical was very sharp. It was about parenting, and the one thing he made clear, he said, we can't continue to parent like it's the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s when it's 2020. So in that process, we have to value the man. We have to put enough in his face that says, not only do we need you, but here's why we love you. So, you know, I just think that that's an important piece. Anybody want to chime in? Go ahead, John.
Shane, yeah, thank you once again for allowing me to participate for day number 3. One of the things I've been looking at, and really it's funny how you went in regards to John Conyers. Here in 2020, you know, we can't parent due to the fact, one, we've become more of a visual society where we mimic, where the kids actually mimic what they see. They mimic what they hear. I've talked to quite a few of our young males that have grown up and are very articulate, but cannot read, but they were able to utilize their hearing and like, okay, I can hold a very in-depth conversation with anyone. But to try to flip that in regards to being a barrier that we have to overcome, how do we like I said, how do we introduce that to dads now that have gone through 15, 20, 25 years of their life without the ability to read? And now we have to try to bridge the gap. You know, we have quite a few authors, male authors, and you all hit it right on the head. That's why I was sitting here. I'm just being quiet because everything I was getting ready to say, y'all done already said it. But really, there are a lot of black male authors, and see a lot of young males don't believe. They only know of really female authors. That's why they feel like it's so feminine. You know, they don't realize when they write rap, they're writing rhymes. You tell them to write a poem, they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. Oh, well, but you're going to write a rap. You know, it's the same concept. You know, to try to get that dad involved, to try to bridge the gap, to make the playing level, whereas, you know, I'm not trying to put you, as we say, on Front Street, to show what you can't do, to show what you have problems with, but to find something where you are comfortable at, to where now that child can look up to you, and all children can look up to you, especially our males, to say, you know what, a black man, he read to me, you know, he found interest, and now I'm interested in reading and writing, and we have that bond, we have that moment to share. it's difficult in 2020 because we have all this technology. You know, I say, yeah, back in my day, which I thought I would never ever say that, but back in my day, you know, teachers were happy just to know that you went to a library to read a book and probably copied it word for word for a paper, you know, because they know the only way you could have gotten that information back then was to travel to a library or to some source to get that material, read it, and write it. Now it's grown to a point where the copy and paste, you don't know what you put on there is there. But it's so much harder for these young individuals now because you can copy and paste, but now they want for you to articulate everything that you've just placed in this paper and to break it down. So how do we bring back the interest, you know, in regards to the passion? We used to have the bookmobiles, which, hey, I used to love them coming down my street. It was an interest. It was something new. Oh, a free book. Oh, that is great. You know, bringing it to the house. Now, I was fortunate or unfortunate, take your pick. My parents had a 6th grade education. They did not teach me in regards to reading. I had an older brother. From that step, really due to the gap in our ages, I was to myself, so the only thing I really had to myself were books, comic books. They were masculine characters in those books that drew interest from me. So I read and I read and I read. All the guys I grew up with, and they will admit it, they're in their 40s and 50s now, yes, they read comic books too because it helped create a bond. It was an interest. It was something masculine that we could all gravitate to. So, yes, 2020, how do we come back to bridge that gap to bring our dads in and to bring them in a comfort zone to assist?
Well, I think you just hit it. I think you just hit it right on the nail. So now, in order for them to really be involved, now you're talking bringing comic books to the table for that age group. And I think you hit it on the nail with that, because then that is something that will get them in touch with their childhood. You know, especially you see all the Marvel movies, and as dads, we think we know everything. So, you know, man, I read that when, like you said, we're taking it back, but I think you hit it on the nail with that. So now how do we get a number of comic books to the table as well, which, you know, brings up their interest as well. So when they're at the table or when they're coming, oh, here's something that I'm familiar with because I read this as a child. So now you're enhancing them and the child in that process. And then there's other books there where you can use it as a challenge. Cindy, to you and to Chris, I really believe that it's how we make them feel. See, we've been beat up so long. We've been beat up, and this is not just, I'm just talking about fatherhood. We can talk about the race. I'm just talking about fatherhood. Fathers have been beat up so long in advertising, music, media, I mean, across the board. Like, and then when you do get to, you know, black fathers, with black fathers being the most involved father right now, shout out to black fathers who will be on Twitter with us. We're having a Twitter party every Friday, Cindy, with all the fathers celebrating fatherhood from 6 to 7. And so your guys are more than welcome. You can send it out. All we're doing is getting on Twitter and celebrating fatherhood, following each other, supporting each other, sharing as much information as possible. And the Black Fathers Organization is like 78,000 fathers. So, you know, the CEO is my guy. We've been talking and, you know, he looked out. But how do we really do that, right? How do we really take this idea and this concept to another place?
First, I'm so honored to be here with you guys. When you ask how do we really do that, Calvin, what do you mean? I'm sorry.
Well, you know, we need the brains, right? Right. So, you know, us, you know, we'll tinker, bang, clunk, clunk. So we need a certain amount of input to really fit the pieces to make this idea work. Because for me, you know, I know my team, they like no more ideas. Like I know your team says the same thing. Cindy, if you bring one more idea in here, like, I know.
Ideas are plentiful, but workers are not, right?
Right.
So could so what if we did this a little bit through 313 reads, because there's staffing that could be there. Chris and Calvin, you know, Leah Van Bell is also on that team now. What if we help write this out, get everybody's feedback? This needs to come from you. If this is okay, then we can say what this is, what everybody agrees to, what there might be some resources for. I liked a lot what you were saying about bringing resources, like what there could be as a whole. What do we have in that regard, and what might we do? And when do we get back together and look at that? Because I want to help activate in any way that I can, is a vehicle, right? Because I believe so strongly, and my heart is so lifted because I know this matters, right? I matter in different circles. You guys matter, right? What happens here and the power is what matters. That's what we got to do. And I think it's also, John, what you were saying about coming from where dads are, or I just call it men, as opposed to you have to be in this place or you have to be in this place. That's what I was saying at the laundromat, is we have to create spaces and things so that everybody can be part of it, and you feel pride and proud because you're helping and it's something you can do, as opposed to, Kelvin, what you're kind of saying is we've been told we can't do this, forget this. Like, let's make this something in that way. I've seen it work. And a lot of people, you know, at our sites too, I see where we have one site right now where the men of the neighborhood, they've wrapped themselves around it. They actually pushed everybody aside. They have their own meeting on what can they do for kids. And they did that. We had a kid that is struggling and isn't going to school. The whole neighborhood knows it. These men wrapped around this kid and they said, we're going to be with him through high school. And this kid was coming, you know, we're still every day to the site. And the men wrapped around him. And sometimes there was a little bit of a struggle, right? That's beautiful. That's what I think could be unique. But let's make it so, like Chris, you were saying, it's not so heavy in a sense. Like we start one place, but then it can just kind of keep building from there. Yeah. Just in the same thing we're saying about parent engagement, is not making it where people feel bad about what they can't do, but right, good about what they can do. They'll find their way. That's not for us to tell them. They'll find their way. And I'm glad to write up what I just heard today. You guys can help me with what's not there. I'm glad to take that, but come back together and let's get this done. Let's do something for the summer. The kids need it more than ever right now. I can't even tell you how much I feel that. And they need relationships without question. I see it every day.
Hold on, we got go ahead, Tyrone.
How you guys doing? Hey, I'm just a father. That's all. I've been here as a fly on the wall. I've heard a lot of great things. I do have a comment. I'm just thinking about the things that were said and thinking about myself as a father, thinking about other individuals that I know that are fathers. Not all of us are engaged the way we should be. And thinking about parental engagement, and primarily engagement in terms of fathers, I think you have to kind of break it up and disaggregate engagement and look at engagement at least from two different perspectives, because there are some men that, like you guys have stated, that there are some people who they don't have certain tools in their toolbox. You know, maybe their literacy level is very low. We know that, and so you have to look at it in terms of one, engaging a parent on promoting education and literacy efforts, the literacy efforts of their child. Can you do that? Will you do that? Are you willing to do that? That's one aspect of it. And then the second one, which is, you know, ideally where we would like people to be, is the parent imparting themselves into the process, i.e. reading to the child, you know, efforts like that. But if you can get a parent engaged in promoting their children's, you know, educational and literacy efforts, they'll get them to the programming, number one. They'll try to be involved in the programming as much as possible. And then that kid has a chance, you know. If they're not there, they don't have a chance, right? And so I think that's the first step, you know. And I think a lot of you guys have hit on it. I heard Cindy and John speak about different things about, you know, the parents not, you know, some of the parents not having, you know, the ability to read at certain levels or not making people feel uncomfortable. But I think you really have to engage parents in that way.
Awesome. Where you from, Tyrone?
I live in Detroit. I actually worked with, I tutored with SOAR over at Evangel for a season. Worked with them. Really exhilarating, you know. And to be honest, you know, so I guess in my own walk as a parent, I dropped the ball early on, and you know, I wasn't as engaged as I should have been in my child's education, you know, and left it up to the school systems, you know, and getting caught up in the rat race of life and things of that nature. And now I kind of took a step back, and you know, I had to kind of gauge things, you know, in terms of where he was at, and you know, why the gaps existed. And it all came back full circle to me, you know. I was the suspect, you know. And so now, you know, we're kind of walking hand in hand and, you know, building him back up, trying to get him to the level that he needs to be at. And, you know, I'm educated. I'm not a teacher, you know, so I kind of lean on, you know, different programs or research online, you know, for the tools, you know, different techniques, you know. And, you know, I'm trying a few different things, you know, and the whole, I guess, foundation is based on kind of making it interesting to him, because a lot of kids, they just aren't interested in reading. And so I do things like, if we read a book, I try to find a movie associated with it, and we kind of make a big deal out of it. You know, you follow up the reading with that movie, you know, make it a movie night or something like that. Yeah. Or I'd like to, you know, I try to read, you know, a book with several kids, you know, my son and maybe, you know, niece or something like that, and then have discussion, you know, around it. You know, we're eaters, so we like to do things, and we like to break bread. We like to do things around the meal, you know. And so I think just trying to come at it from different angles, and even I heard mention like comic books and what interests individuals, and nowadays kids are heavy into video games and things of that nature, you know. And so I'll try to find something that relates to, you know, the latest and greatest game or something like that, or latest and greatest characters from a game, and we'll read about something like that and kind of talk about it, you know. And that kind of is a sounding board for me to, you know, hear his interest in things and impart ideas. Oh, well, maybe you might want to, you know, look at this coding class, you know, if you're so into this, you know. I guess I'm the ever capitalist, you know. You might as well parlay this into, you know, a potential career. And so I just try to approach it from different angles of trying to make it interesting. And it's a challenge. It really is.
Well, that's what we do as fathers. I'm glad you're on. So this is a perfect time for me to segue into recruiting you to join the Good Fathers Only organization. As you see, these brothers that are involved are all members of Good Fathers Only, and we bring fatherhood together for that reason. And you having that mindset, we would love for you to join us. It doesn't take much, and and we need your input as we unite fatherhood worldwide. On the other end of that, Cindy, one of the things that we can also do is once the parent is there, right? This is a little trick that we use. Once the parent is there, we have something there to engage the parent. So separately, we pull the parent away so they're not involved, so to speak, in the development. We call ours, this is what has helped our parental involvement in our mentoring program, which was it was on beast mode until this COVID, was our boss, Building Our Sons, our boss network, which is still going. So Heather is still doing that with the mothers and the input and the different parent involvement where they could go and get involved in something else. It just was helping our parental involvement on a whole nother level. So, maybe that's a little piece that we can add where we can get the parent involved in something away. So maybe in that setting, while we are engaging in the kids, we really got the parent over here finding out exactly what you said. What are their needs? How can we help you? And with us having all the services at the table, we can help. If we, I guess I like to think too big. Everybody had to bring me down to, let's think right here and move this little pocket. But, right now with everything being the way it is, somehow we got to prevent what is happening. And so I'm with it. I'm not giving up. I'm not saying that, this is a great idea because my executive director is on this call. So I'm not saying great idea, I'm picking up another idea, but I think it's in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Tyrone, you can look up thegoodfathersonly.com. We are doing the Father of the Month as well amongst our members to first go. But from now on, starting July, we'll be doing a Father of the Month every month on the Good Fathers Only site. With that being said, anybody, last minute, last statements, before we clear this call? I think it's been very powerful. Brother Mel?
Well, I just want to say that I'm thankful for this town hall. I think we've had a lot of great messages. That's true here, but I think the one thing that we need to remember is that all of us play an important part in improving literacy, and especially us men. We play such a vital role, not only in our homes, but our communities. I know Tyrone mentioned about SOAR Detroit, which is close to me too, because I've worked with SOAR Detroit for a couple of school years. And I got a chance to work one-on-one with young men. And, a personal story here real quick. One young man I worked with for a number of weeks, and I built a great rapport with this young man where around just before Christmas time, he gave me a gift. And, it's something that he made for me because he appreciated just me sitting down there and working with him. And it means a whole lot to me because I care about this young man. I care about his development because I know that if he learns how to read, his future is bright. And that's for all of our children. So if we can work together and to really deal with this issue, there's going to be a lot of young people who are going to be striving in our society. So that's our should be our goal, and that should be our aim.
Mel, tell the people how many kids you got, man.
I have 5 kids, 3 girls, 2 boys.
That brother still go. You hear me? And he's still going. I love Melvin Decares because he's going. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh yeah, so just man, great honor to be on this podcast with everyone here. Just great leadership in our city, and you know, however I can be supportive of anything moving forward. You know, I'm here. You know, we do have to change the narrative on fatherhood in every aspect. I think I mentioned to somebody, you know, I'm tired of seeing TV shows where the father is just the big dumb guy and everybody else in the house is
Right.
smarter than him, and all he does is grill, cook, and cut the grass and go to his man cave, right?
Right.
And, you know, and that seems to be the prevailing, but you know, regardless of race, that's the prevailing image that we get of fatherhood across this country and in popular media. And so I'm really about mentioning, you know, moving forward with how we, you know, change the narrative on fatherhood, particularly Black fatherhood, but fatherhood in general, because I just, you know, I don't know, I don't like the word man cave, you know. I like to be upstairs where everybody else is, or out in the backyard myself. Don't relegate me to the basement, you know.
Right.
So just, you know, in that, just proud to be here, and however I can be supportive, brother, just, you know, you all just let me know.
Anybody else before I go? Cindy?
You know, I'm just, my heart is full. I'm grateful to be here and want to walk alongside and help.
Awesome. So, you know, as we move forward, Cindy, what are the fraternities you work with, real quick, before?
Sigma Kappa. So 8 of them.
Okay, so it's 8 fraternities. Good. So that makes it even better, right? So now, you know, you got 8 fraternities that's willing, and that makes it even better. So I'm sure you got the Kappas, the Qs.
Don't have the Qs yet.
Okay, you don't have the
We're gonna
Qs. Well, we're about to get you the Qs. Dr. Hill is a Q, so we're gonna get you the Qs, right? I sit on his board. You're gonna get the Qs. So with that being said, right, I thank you all for coming. I think it would be, I think it would say about the town hall. It was great conversation, but as anyone knows that's on this call that know me, the action is where it's really at. And, you know, I have no problem with that. I think we need to understand, yes, like Chris said, fathers are very, very valuable. And when I share that, it was, you know, it's a point that I've been preaching about value, the value of a father. There's 71 values come with a father, right? And so if you remove a father, as soon as you remove a father from a home, right, mental illness, trauma, kids don't properly grow. I mean, there are a number of things that go with when a father is not present. When we leave our sons in situations where they may be the only male figure, we put pressure on them physically, mentally, spiritually, because we start saying names like they're the king and they're the young man, right? And it kind of pushes them, as we've learned through the psychology and trauma, it kind of pushes them to thinking that they are a man at a certain point ahead of time, stretching their minds and their bodies away from I have to provide, because the idea that we have preached to our young men and to a number of fathers about providing. Providing is not just something that, you know, a father shows up, I paid his bill, and that's all. Providing is providing time. Providing is providing care. Providing is providing nurturing. Providing is providing touch. Providing is providing a shoulder to cry on. Providing is providing solutions. When we talk about provision and providing for fathers, we need to understand truly how important fathers are. So this month, and what we've been doing is we're swagging. I'm going to celebrate myself even more. Today, my celebration was I stopped and got me some cigars. I had found myself not doing for me, so today it was time for me to take something off my list, that I had to create a list that I did things for me, and the cigars was on the list. So I stopped there and I got me some cigars. One of the cigars I'm going to celebrate with my son, who has said he loves me. He has apologized, and he has more than shown how important his dad was and is to him. And I think that is the message that we all are responsible for as men, husbands, fathers. That is the message we're ultimately responsible for. And I am grateful for you guys that coming on. Thank you, Campaign for Black Male Achievement, for sponsoring. Thank you, the Daddy Talk podcast. Right. Thank you, Good Fathers Only, the Good Fathers Only group, the Daddy Talk podcast, and the Campaign for Black Male Achievement for making this possible. Tomorrow, we're off, but I have a Daddy Talk I'll be doing tomorrow. And then Friday is the Twitter. We're getting on Twitter. It's the Twitter. We're going to get on Twitter and we're going to celebrate. I've been picking out my little memes just to say I love you, you, and you. I do not want you to not know as a father that Good Fathers Only and Calvin Mann loves you. With that being said, thank you. I appreciate you guys. Great town hall. Cindy, we'll put it in an email and we'll go to work right away.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
You guys have a great evening. And thank you.